We can dream of going to the moon, and we have. But we should also dream locally, right here, and we can. In Lower Manhattan, as much. 23 brave Jews dreamed here back in 1654, after landing here, of building a good life here. And they did, here in Lower Manhattan. 75 years later, other Jews who followed them dreamed of building the first synagogue in North America, right here in Lower Manhattan, on Mill Street, and they did. And since then, other Jews, along with non-Jews, for hundreds of years, have had a major impact in Lower Manhattan and all over America. So, is it too much for us to dream today of creating a new small synagogue where there stood, now South William Street, and to erect the statue of their most important rabbi, Gershom Mendes Saisis, right across the street from this synagogue? Of course it is not. We should, we must, we will, unless we aren't good enough, but we are. We have already this year named South William Street in honor of the Mill Street Synagogue and Rabbi Gershom Mendes Saisis. And now we have placed a permanent plaque on South William Street to honor the Mill Street Synagogue and Rabbi Gershom Mendes Saisis. It is not time to stop now. Our job is not complete on South William Street until we create a new synagogue there and erect the statue of Rabbi Gershom Mendes Saisis. Then maybe we can rest and dream of more to do elsewhere.
Please welcome Cantor Black.
Hey.
על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על ביתנו התינוקת, שמורני הטוב, על האש המבוערת, על המים הזבים, על האיש השב הביתה מן המרחקים, על כל אלה, על כל אלה, שמור נא לי כלי הטוב, על הדבש ועל העוקץ, על המר והמתוק, על נתקור נטוע, אל תשכח את התקווה.
Scott Reckler, whose family foundation donated the Mill Street Synagogue plaque we dedicated on September 6, 2019, was to be our guest of honor and the keynote speaker. At the last moment, Scott received a call from the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who Scott often works closely with, and asked to meet with him, attend an important meeting with the governor in Midtown at the same time as our dedication ceremony on South William Street. And so Scott was unable to be with us. It is my honor and privilege to begin this video documentary to read the remarks Scott would have delivered on September 6th. I want to thank everyone for being here today in honor of this special occasion. I particularly want to thank Arthur Piccolo, who has been instrumental in making this event happen. We are gathered here today to honor the 23 Jewish men, women, and children who arrived here in Lower Manhattan at what is now Bowling Green 365 years ago. This group of brave men and women created the first Jewish congregation in America, Shereth Israel, and just a few generations later built the first Jewish synagogue in North America in 1730, which we are memorializing with a permanent plaque here today. With this plaque, we not only mark their incredible accomplishment, but it will also serve as a reminder to future generation of this group's unshakable faith and vision for a better world. We certainly need this kind of vision more than ever. It's no secret that we are living in tumultuous times. We've seen a rise of hate, in division, and what feels like the breaking down of our global community. In today's uncertain world, we all need to be more informed, more open-minded, and more committed to making a better world. This reminds me of the one thing I learned when nobody thought I was paying attention in Hebrew school. And that is the concept of the Taham Olam, which is the responsibility for each and every one of us to literally repair the world, to do our part to make our world and to make our communities better places. Today, more than ever, we have a responsibility to rise to this challenge. Today, more than ever, we have a responsibility to care for those who are displaced. Today, more than ever, we have a responsibility to speak out against those who try to divide us and who use politics of fear and hatred. Today, more than ever, we have a responsibility to take responsibility for the health and vitality of our community at large. To me, that is a moral and economic imperative in these uncertain times. Thank you again for holding today's event, and thank you all for coming. Scott Reckler.
Lower class. So on that Sunday morning, we had approximately 15 adults, right down the block at 9 South William, and before I began, I asked a question. I asked, anyone know where the first synagogue in North America was? There was a little synagogue called the Mill Street Synagogue. September 7th, a small group of Jews, 23 people, came from Recife, Brazil to New Amsterdam. And that was the first Jewish community, 1654. And they established the beginning of a small community, which eventually in 1730 turned into the Mill Street Synagogue. And that synagogue, Mill Street Synagogue, was on this block. How come we never heard about it? And I showed them that sign down the block that says Mill Street Synagogue, Seiches Way. And I said, Rabbi, this is amazing. I said, yes, it is amazing. But now we could actually put an address. We could actually see where our great history took place. And the reason why I was able to do that was because on April 8th, a new era began for South William Street, which used to be called Mill Street. A new era began on April 8th. Due to the hard work of a few individuals, led by James Kaplan and the Lower Manhattan Historical Association. Now, a street sign is nice, but there's no context. Just a street name, Mill Street Synagogue. People walk by, where's the synagogue? They're not sure exactly what's happening. So today we are here to continue a process which began on April 8th to recognize the amazing history that this street carries, with giving it a context to the street sign. And the context is a beautiful plaque describing the history of this particular street. Generously donated by the Reckler family, and thanks to the Bailey and Jerome family for hosting the sign rent-free on their building. Let's hear it for them. So today, we're here to acknowledge that, to acknowledge the amazing history that this street has in Jewish American history. You know, we hear many times how Steven Spielberg, he brought, Holocaust education to America and the American community at large and the Jewish American community. if I may say that James Kaplan and the Lower Manhattan Historical Association, together with Arthur Piccolo, what Steve Spielberg did for the Holocaust, they're doing for the history of this block, giving it its proper recognition that many people do not know, but due to their hard work and efforts, people are going to know and learn about. You know what I see? I see a street sign that says Mill Street Synagogue on it. And now, tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'll have to turn my neck a little bit to the left, but besides just seeing the sign of Mill Street Synagogue, but also see a beautiful plaque that is being placed there. Now for me, that's something that's amazing. There is an expression in Hebrew, Chazra Ateret Li Rosha. The crown will return to its former glory. We say that in regards to Jerusalem, but I'd like to extend that to just all the mini Jerusalems, the synagogues around the world, to this block over here. It's coming back to its former glory. So, gentlemen, for those that think that they came here today just to celebrate history, we are here to celebrate history, but not just history. We're here celebrating our future. So, there's one man that really was the driving force behind this project and behind this plaque. The Torah refers to Joseph. We all heard of the name Joseph? When Joseph is described, his brothers called him Joseph the Dreamer. And then the Torah says, let's see what his dream will be. 5 months ago, after the street received its additional name, Arthur came over to me and says, Rabbi, I'd like to put up a plaque on that building. And I said, Arthur, go ahead. I support you 100%. Whatever you need, I'll try to help you. But I think it's a great vision, it's a great dream. Well, Arthur's dream is today a reality. Now, Arthur has many other dreams and visions, and I wish him lots of success with all of them, and we'll continue to support him. But that being said, I'd like to introduce Arthur Piccolo of the Bowling Green Association.
Today is a very special day and a wonderful opportunity when we gather like this, with a group like this, on an important task of unveiling and dedicating the plaque. But the reason we chose today, the plaque was ready 2 months ago. To be a little dramatic about it, today, September 6th, is the last time, 365 years ago, that there were no Jewish Americans, all right? On September 7th, 1654, 23 Jews arrived at what is now Bowling Green, and they stayed here, and there have been Jews in America ever since. Tomorrow will be that day, but what they did by coming here led directly to why we're here today. They established the Congregation of Shearith Israel, and those that followed them built the Mill Street Synagogue in 1730. I want to take this opportunity, as important as it is, to add another element to this event. Bowling Green became a city in 1653, 1 year before the first Jews arrived. It also became the first park in all of North America by an act of government in 1733, 3 years after the synagogue. The colonists wanted a manicured, protected area for their favorite sport, which was lawn bowling. And even though there were millions and millions of acres surrounding them. So they went to the Common Council, today's City Council, and they said, please create a park in front of the fort. In front of the fort was always the town square, the meeting place. The City Council said, great idea, but we have no money. Typical. 3 enlightened, successful business leaders came forth. And they said, we will pay for the park, we will maintain the park. And so on March 12, 1733, Bowling Green became the first park created by government anywhere in America. What they received in return for what they did was a single peppercorn. One peppercorn between the 3 of them as a symbolic payment in honor of what they did. Over 250 years later, the Bowling Green Association, in their honor and in recognition, established the Bowling Green Association Peppercorn Award, which is given out on special occasions like this to special people. This is the Peppercorn Award. There's somebody in this audience who has received many greater awards than this, but there is nobody who is more deserving of the Bowling Green Peppercorn Award. If I can open this and present, that individual is John E. Herzog. John, I'd like to read this in your honor. Just as three colonial business people in Lower Manhattan, John Chambers, Peter Bayard, and Peter Jay, in the spirit of altruism and community pride, built America's first park, Bowling Green Park, in March 1733, for the enjoyment of all their fellow citizens, for the symbolic payment of a single peppercorn. Today we honor New Yorkers who demonstrate those same qualities that made these three colonial New Yorkers worthy of our praise and appreciation. For your outstanding commitment to Bowling Green and Lower Manhattan, for your leadership and spirit, and as an inspiration for others, the Bowling Green Association Peppercorn Award to John E. Herzog. John.
I am moved. I had no idea that this award was going to find its way into my hands. I am very complimented, and I am going to keep my remarks to these few words. I thank you all, and I will look forward to more.
Quickly to the purpose at hand. I know we want to move along.
Best speech of all.
You know, Jim Kaplan had a dream. He had a dream for years. Jim Kaplan had talked about the fact that on this street, the first synagogue in America was created in 1730, and no one was doing anything about it. But because Jim had a dream, he followed through on that dream, and he had this street named in honor of the first synagogue in America. All right, the first Jews who came here had a dream. The Jews who built this synagogue had a dream. I think we should have additional dreams. I dream that by next April 8th, for the 290th anniversary of the Mill Street Synagogue, that we have a statue of Rabbi Gershom Seises right here. I think that's a dream that's reasonable, facing towards the place where his synagogue stood. I think we can make that happen. But I have another dream, which some here may agree with, others not. There has not been, even though we had the first synagogue in North America, for years and years, there has not been a synagogue anywhere near here. The closest synagogue to this place is up on Beekman Place near the Brooklyn Bridge. The next one all the way up on White Street near Canal Street. This historic place has not had a synagogue for generations. It's time we had a synagogue again. This is the street, and I hope we have a location that somehow can become this storefront right here. Possibly the smallest synagogue, it would be the smallest synagogue on earth, but the new Mill Street Synagogue. I hope somehow we can make that happen, and in fact, dedicate it in time for Hanukkah this year, Sunday, December 20th, and fill this street with a joyous crowd for the dedication of the new Mill Street Synagogue right across the street. It's a dream, but I think it can happen if we can get the right support. It will be historic, and it will be the greatest monument to the first Jews in America. Thank you very much. And let me introduce our Master of Ceremonies, finally, Rabbi Joseph Patazzi, the Rabbi of New York.
Thank you so much. Firstly, let me take a moment to recognize, I think, one of the best cantors in America today, Cantor Barry Black. You had the chance of listening to him before. Barry, you always said to me you wanted to sing on Broadway. I got you near Broadway. That's the best I can do. Let me say to you, in New York, in order to have a Hanukkah menorah at Bowling Green, you need a Catholic named Arthur Piccolo. In order to have a plaque for the Mill Street Synagogue honoring a Jewish community, you need a Catholic named Arthur Piccolo. So Arthur, thank you for all you've done over the years. When I first became rabbi of a synagogue in Brooklyn Heights, there was an elderly Holocaust survivor who came into the office one day and he said, "Could you give me the addresses of different synagogues in New York?" I said, sure, but you live here in Brooklyn. Why do you want synagogues all around New York? He says, because I saw synagogues being destroyed on Kristallnacht. And when I see there are synagogues that are being built, when I see there are synagogues that are thriving, I realize there's hope for the future. I think that he is looking down today and extremely proud that Mill Street Synagogue is being preserved. You mentioned earlier that 23 Jews came in 1654, and they were not welcomed very warmly by Peter Stuyvesant. As a matter of fact, Peter Stuyvesant sought to isolate them and put a wall around them, put them in a ghetto. Coincidentally, that area is called Wall Street. So when you come here, think of those 23 who refused to succumb to passive resignation, who said, we are not going to give up until we have full equality. You think of those 23 who didn't walk away, but who certainly maintained their self-respect as proud Jews. My father taught me years ago, I don't care what kind of Jew you are, but be proud of the Jew that you are. So Arthur, it's been said that you're a dreamer. Interestingly, in Hebrew, the word for dream is cholem. With those three letters, you can write other words. One is lochem, that means to fight. The other is lechem, that means bread. I find there are some people in this world who tragically have to fight for a piece of bread. There are others who tragically only dream to fight. And then you have the Piccolos of the world, and many others here who emulate that spirit, who fight for dreams. So thank you so much for remembering the 23, for remembering that Holocaust survivor looking down and being proud, and let's continue to translate dreams into the realities of our lives. Thank you very much.
On behalf of my family, this is an incredible honor for all of us to be part of this really a special ceremony. I want to commend Arthur and his group, the Bowling Green Association, and thanks to the Reckler family for recognizing this. You know, it's funny, my family and I, we live in Brooklyn, and every morning when I drive to work, when we go up the Gowanus, if you look to the left, you'll see the Statue of Liberty. And it always strikes me, because when I look at it, I imagine what it must have been like for my great-great-grandparents to see that statue for the first time and to come to this incredible country. We are in the busiest spot in the world, and yet when you take a few minutes and actually think about the history that occurred here, you get inspired. If you were walking these blocks 200 years ago, for example, you may have bumped into George Washington. Maybe 100 years ago, it was J.P. Morgan. But on this particular occasion, 300 years ago, you would bump into the first Jews to settle America. It just shows you how far we've come. As Americans, as Jews, it's an incredible testament. And it reminds all of us here how important our life's work is. What we do today really will echo hundreds of years into the future. It inspires us, it humbles us in many ways, and it makes life more meaningful when you realize where you've come from. So, with that said, I just again want to thank everybody for making this occasion a reality. This building of ours, I will always recognize now as the spot of the Mill Street Synagogue. It'll always remind me where we've come from as a country and as a people. And I just want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you, Arthur, and thank you very much.
I just want to say to the patriarch of the Jerome group how heartening it is, seriously, to see a father, a grandfather who works together with his family. You don't see this all that often. That's a great statement about you and your loyalty to the family and their loyalty to you. So thank you for that reassuring statement today.
Thank you.
Let me also mention to you Dan Nadell, who's the guitarist, who came here from Carnegie Hall, right? You said you walked by there to get to the train. But Dan is here accompanying our great cantor, Mary Black. James Kaplan, who needs no introduction, the president of the Lower Manhattan Historical Association. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Rabbi Potashnik, and thank you, Arthur. first became aware of that this was the first synagogue in North America when I did a walking tour for the Congregation Shereth Israel about 15 years ago on the 350th anniversary of the Jews coming. And I'd been a walking tour guide for many years before that. And it occurred to me in the course of the research for that tour and finding that this was really probably one of the most important places in Jewish American history here in New York and possibly in the country. And that nobody understood that very few people understand the importance of Jewish American history, of the Jews in America, how important America was to the Jews and how important the Jews were to America. What began here with this first congregation, the first synagogue, later would be an alliance with the Patriots, with George Washington under Gershom Mendes Seiches, where Washington would promulgate the famous Newport letter in which he said, "We will give to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance." And that would set the tone for this country and for the reason that Jews from around the world would come here. First, there were the German Jews who came here in droves, like the Seligmans, the Lehmans, the Goldmans, and they were very active. They would build Wall Street. So Wall Street became very important in American through the activity of the Jews, which was very important. And because of the Jews that were here, the wealth, in the 1880s there came millions of Russians fleeing oppression and the pogroms in Russia. The Jewish population of the United States was about 250,000 in 1880, and it would be 5 million by 1990. And these Jews and other Jews around would form alliances with other ethnic groups, like the Irish, the blacks, and very important political alliances. Al Smith, who was the great governor of New York, was part of the product of the Irish-Jewish alliance. And Smith and the Democratic Party would be very important in the 1920s and particularly in the 1930s, because in the 1930s the most horrific things began in Europe. The most horrific mass murder began under Adolf Hitler. But of course, who would stand against Hitler? The United States of America under the Jews. It was said that Hitler thought Roosevelt, that his little name was Rosenfeld, and that he was the... so as a result of the great influence of the Jewish people here in America, the United States Army and the Allies would stand up and thank God they would defeat Hitler. Then, after the Second World War, there was a question about what was going to happen with Israel. But the state of Israel was really created by an alliance here of Jews here in the United States, headed by Harry Truman. Harry Truman was one of the founders. I think Matt Knott, you recently recognized that there were three important people in the founding of the state of Israel: Herzl, Balfour, and Harry Truman. So I think we cannot underestimate the importance of this building and the importance of this stock to the Jewish people. I would frequently, younger people would go out to lunch and I'd say, you know, this is the most important site in American Jewish history, right here. And they would say, what? Mr. Kaplan? What? Well, Mr. Kaplan, why isn't it marked? There ought to be a plaque. And that would ring in my ears. There ought to be a plaque here. Well, it's to the benefit of Arthur and the others who the Jerome family and the others who and we now have a plaque for the first time. And I'm very glad, and I think it's a great thing, and hopefully for the first time many more Jews will realize the importance of this site, but more importantly they should realize the importance of the Jews in America.
Honored to introduce Peter Heim, President of the Sons of the Revolution, New York State.
The Sons of the Revolution own and operate Fraunces Tavern Museum in the historic Fraunces Tavern a block away. And we are extremely appreciative of efforts such as that led by Arthur Piccolo and the Bowling Green Association to commemorate the history of Lower Manhattan. You've, of course, heard today about the arrival of the first Jews in 1654 and the establishment of the synagogue here in 1730. Fast forward a few years, and members of that congregation played a critical role in support of the Patriot cause in the American Revolution. We take particular note of the fact that many members of the Shereth Israel congregation, led by Gershon Mendes Seixas, often known as the Patriot Rabbi, fought for the Patriot side. And each year, the color guard of the Sons of the Revolution are honored to participate in the Shereth Israel Memorial Day ceremony at the Chatham Square Cemetery, where we honor members of that congregation who rendered patriotic service in the Revolutionary War and for over 200 years afterwards. So that's an aspect of the congregation that I think needs to be commemorated and remembered. Thank you very much.
We're going to be going across the street for the plaque. Let me thank all of you and Arthur once again for bringing us together. So let's go across the street where we have a chance to see the plaque and to also touch the plaque.
We commemorate today a relic of the past, but which is very much, as the rabbi explained earlier, part of our future. We note the importance of the words, if I will forget thee, O Jerusalem, I will forget my right hand. The Jew's heart has always connected the past to the future. Jerusalem, the soul of the Jewish people, connected the pains of the past to the hope for the future.
That's nice. Why don't y'all come a little bit closer?
Everybody please take a look, and everybody please touch the plaque, say a silent prayer. Good luck.
Martha, that's a beautiful plaque.
Thank you. It is. It works so beautiful. It
Now
really
going
is.
to sound the shofar, as in the tradition, the month before Rosh Hashanah.